All right, hello and welcome everybody, and welcome back to our Season 1 finale of our Drive to Career mode here in F123. And I can't believe I'm already here, with the time that I've been able to play and work schedule and hanging out with family. It's hard to believe that we're actually through our first full season here on F123. And with Williams, with the engine failure from last week in Vegas, our last home race of the season. And yeah, so it wasn't a gearbox issue. Well, it wasn't a full-fledged engine failure, but it was a gearbox issue, so they forced us to retire the car. But with the rest of our engines being pretty much up there at the same engine weight, we're going to go ahead and take the penalty and in turn slap on every other part that we can for a good race this weekend. See what kind of pace we can get from the back end of the pack. As we're sitting 6 points ahead of Pierre Gasly, so that's basically our goal today, is get ahead of Pierre Gasly or finish in the points. That way we hold P9 in the driver standings. Mercedes has already claimed the constructor standings, with the Red Bull in second and Ferrari in third. All right, real quick before we get on the track, you guys noticed from the intro we put on all new parts for the car, so we're going to be taking the grid penalty. I was a little worried because it said a 5-place grid penalty in practice, but I put on an entirely whole set of parts. So we'll have to be starting from the back and seeing how we can do. So let's get out there.
Okay, just 2 laps of fuel remaining now. Okay, just 2 laps of fuel remaining now.
We're all ready for tomorrow's race, but before we begin, let's have a quick look at those who'll be fronting the grid. Russell, Perez and Lewis Hamilton. Well, that wraps up qualifying, but don't worry, we'll be back tomorrow as we head into the Grand Prix.
All right, so here is the provisional top 10. I know we're going to be getting penalties for our engine components, as Max Verstappen is going to be bumped up to P9. We'll see who else we get paired up with at the back of the pack with some other last-minute penalties. But George Russell, Sergio Perez running out the front row, Lewis Hamilton, P3, Pierre Gasly, our rival, P4. He's doing a lot better than the first half of the season. Fernando Alonso, starting in P5 for the race if he doesn't have any penalties. And it's his final race. It's his farewell season. He's retiring, so we believe. And there was word on the street that they might be able to contact us for his spot. But we'll have to wait and see how this race goes and how we can compare against some of the other drivers before we can think about next season. So we're going to have to most likely expect a start from the back of the pack as we're here in Abu Dhabi for the finale of the season. So let's get right to it.
So here we are, ready to go racing for one final time this year. Another season of victories, controversies and rivalries lies in our wake. And just one challenge remains, here in the United Arab Emirates, on a circuit that made its spectacular debut back in 2009. Welcome to the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. The Yas Marina circuit is made up of 3.28 miles of track, featuring 16 corners with 2 very long straights. DRS zones going into the heavy braking zones of both turn 5 and turn 7 offer plenty of potential for overtaking. The circuit comes with its fair share of tricky corners, which will certainly test a driver's braking management. Before we begin, let's take a quick look at the grid lineup for today's race. What a qualifying yesterday for George Russell. He'll start today's race from pole position. Sergio Perez lines up alongside. Looking at the rest of today's grid, we have Hamilton, Gasly, Fernando Alonso, Sainz, Norris, Ocon, Verstappen, Bottas, Leclerc, Oscar Piastri, Joe, Sargent, Stroll, Magnussen, Hulkenberg, Ricciardo, Tsunoda and Johnson. It's almost time for those 5 red lights to go out then. Let's see who can prevail today. And with me today, of course, is Anthony Davidson.
And they can do it for sure, as long as they don't dwell too much on the position. At the end of the day, there's only one way to go racing, and that's to give it everything you've got. Either your best is good enough to stay in the hunt, or it's not. There's no point giving any less than 100%.
Right, it's been a long, hard season. We're almost at the end, but we cannot switch off until after that checkered flag today. Let's try and end today's race on a high note.
And that's going to be the goal for today. So we're going to see about, okay, so hard to medium. Hopefully there aren't going to be any yellow flags. So we're probably going to stretch out these, yeah, we're going to go ahead and stretch out these hard tires, lap 11. 10, 11, and then drop the fuel load and see what we can do. So, see you guys on the track. All right, so here we are pulling into our grid slot for the final time this season. As you can see, we're starting P20 next to Yuki Tsunoda, moving on to the 5 red lights, and you can see that we were on the hard tires. Everybody else in front of us on the soft tires, so we're actually off to a better start than the guys in the back of the pack. So Ricardo, Tsunoda here in the back. And then Magnussen and Hulkenberg in the Haas as we take it easy through turn 1. And giving way to Daniel Ricciardo as we get into grips on our hard tires. And wish I would have put a little bit more grip into the tires off the start. But we're off to a pretty good start as we're moving on to Sector 2. We're going to be seeing a lot of action in this race in these 20 laps in the Sector 2. There's 2 long straights as we let the toe take care of what we can do here in the back as Ricciardo's ahead of us and Hulkenberg. So Stroll's up there in P16. We just slot in behind Ricciardo, taking it easy, and we take the opportunity to go to the outside of that turn, take the inside of the next turn. Take that position on Ricciardo, taking a little bit too much curb. And we have a good launch out of that chicane. So Hulkenberg and Stroll in P16, P17, they're fighting for that position as we're less than half a second back, and this long left-hander, you can brake a lot later than I expected when I came through practice. But yeah, we have a lot of work ahead of us. So we're sitting in P18, Hulkenberg ahead, closing on Hulkenberg, moving to the outside, and almost getting a track limit warning there as Ricardo moves up side by side with us, but he gives way as we have the inside of the corner. And we're already done with the first lap. Russell, Hamilton, Perez with the top 3, Alonso, Sainz, Gasly, Verstappen back in P7. You gotta remember, Verstappen and Russell are in the championship fight. They're only about, I think it's like 10 or 15 points, I don't quite remember. But Mercedes holding out the top. We're moving on to lap 3 now. DRS, moving on, Hulkenberg moving on the inside of this next turn. As we brake late and try to make a move on Lance Stroll. We give way to him. Taking a little bit more curve than we wanted to. So we have a good launch out of the chicane, but not good enough. We're about a second back behind Stroll. And so we get a second wind and no toe. Hulkenberg is behind us with a good toe. So we move into Sector 3. As you can see, Stroll is in the tow of Kevin Magnussen up in P15. Moving on to the next lap here in Sector 2. Finally able to get close enough to Lance Stroll to get into his tow. He's 2 tenths back behind Magnussen. We're about 5 tenths back. As they go side by side, we're coming in through this first long straight. And we are able to utilize the fact that we brake late, moving into the chicane to try to catch up to them. Stroll gets caught to the outside of that chicane as we get a better launch, and he goes over the curb. So we managed to make a double overtake there on Magnussen and Stroll. Stroll dropping back to P18. The 2 halves behind us as we're P15 currently, moving wide, giving Magnussen the inside, giving him the space that he needs as he backs out. And you can see those 3 back there fighting their positions as we're only on lap 4. We break a little bit early here, coming through Sector 3. Moving on to lap 7, Stroll is now behind us, and we're behind Joe Granier. We're going to brake late here, coming into Sector 2, taking that speed as much as we can, as we almost come in contact with Granier Joe. And we use that pace that we have, especially with DRS, as he's on soft tires. You can see how much of a fight it is on these hard tires. As we move in on our teammate Logan Sargent, who's currently P13 behind Oscar Piastri. Me and Joe side by side going into the first corner of the chicane, but I come out ahead. And next up is Logan Sargent in P13, coming back the next lap in the same area. Once again, using the outside lane, carry as much speed as I can on these hard tires and get that DRS. And we were going to use the tow of Logan Sargent, but I had a good launch, so we're going to be able to take ahead of him. But you can see he's still side by side here on the soft tires. Lap 8, and I believe our plan was to go in on lap 11, but Stroll is closing in on us. So myself, Sargent, and Stroll here for the fight for P13 as we coming through Sector 2 into Sector 3 on lap 8. You see how much pace our teammate has on those soft tires. He's doing a lot better than he did in the majority of the season, so he is doing very well. Hopefully we can get him into the points as we're starting fairly in the back. But this time Sargent and Stroll, Sargent has tow on myself. I slowed down a little bit to get him with some DRS, but it was a big mistake because Stroll and Sargent both had DRS. They take over positions. I drop back down to P15, come through the chicane. Magnussen and Joe are back in this fight with all of these cars, and I take a little bit too much curb. But once again, I get a better launch than Stroll out of that chicane. And back up in P14 as Stroll holds the inside line. So we have to give him the inside line, try not to come in contact with him, as we have all new parts on our car. If you guys don't remember from the beginning of the video, as we're trying to look for an opportunity to pass him, as our teammate stays up in P13, braking a little bit late, almost coming in contact with Stroll. You can see Magnussen in the mirror as we're rounding out the end of lap 9. And at the end of lap 9, you can see Hamilton, Alonso, and Norris. Those guys up front are taking their opportunity into the pits, and Kevin Magnussen in the Haas goes into the pits as well. So it leaves myself ahead of Sargent, who goes into the pits behind Lance Stroll. As we're currently up in P9, and Lewis Hamilton coming out of the pits here as he's currently P10. The end of lap 10 now. Now we're in the middle of a fight with Stroll. We're trying to stay in the tow, and we decide to come into the pits behind him. And we're like, okay, I'm going to be changing to the mediums, and lo and behold, he changes to the mediums from the softs. So we're going to be even fight, and hopefully we have a little bit better pace. As you can see, Piastri coming out of the pits ahead of us. Unless that was Norris, I'm not quite sure. But our teammate Logan Sargent back at P18 as we're in the pits, and you can see we are right up in Stroll's gearbox as we're coming out of the pits, coming under the main straight, coming out onto the road. Logan Sargent back up in the P13, basically where he was before, because we have a lot of room behind us. Hulkenberg 1.8 seconds back behind us in the pits, so we're less than 2 tenths behind Stroll, and with no safety cars, we have open DRS on Lance Stroll to try to overtake him before the chicane, or in the chicane in this situation, as Magnussen is fighting Sargent for P13. We make that move on the right side of Stroll, and we end up braking well enough to where Stroll has to slot in behind us. So we have a good launch out of the chicane. And we finally make our way back up the grid up to Magnussen and Sargent on lap 12. At the end of lap 11, lap 12 now. As we wait to make our move here on the left-hander turn. And we're going to brake late on the outside, giving Magnussen the inside lane, knowing we're going to have that momentum on those mediums. And we have the tow and DRS behind our teammate Logan Sargent. And so we're running pretty good. You can see the Haas on the right side. We try to run him wide, and he comes back over, so we have to be precautious as we're forced to the inside of the chicane. Stroll sitting 2 seconds back behind myself as the Haas goes over the curb a lot more than he wanted to and coming in contact with us. As we have a little bit of wheel spin there. Lap 15 now, we're behind our teammate Logan Sargent coming into Sector 2 once again. But this time, doing a switchback on our own teammate. That way I can get a good launch and Stroll can defend against Lance. And Sargent can defend against Lance Stroll. It's not going to be enough. Sargent tries to use our tow to get with us. But Stroll has DRS. Sargent has DRS. He tries to move in with him on the inside. We're holding on the outside of the chicane, moving on the inside. We push Stroll wide. We're getting a little bit aggressive throughout this entire race with Lance Stroll. As we're fighting for P13, Esteban Ocon up there in P12 with Piastri. Fighting for P11 just outside the points as we're still side by side with Stroll. It's how much of a fight this was. We haven't fought this hard since Singapore with the new layout, trying to catch up to Max Verstappen. But lap 15, Stroll gets ahead of us. We still have 5-6 more laps to get ahead of him. Lap 16 now, Sector 2, literally the next lap. We have the DRS, we have the timing on these medium tires, we have the pace. We get ahead of Stroll before the chicane, trying to push him wide. He pushes us back. A little bit of contact from tire to tire. Is that we have a good, clean launch into the chicane, and we're able to increase that gap between us and Stroll. Lap 18 now, Stroll's able to catch up. 6.3 seconds, 5-second gap between us and Piastri, but you can see that gap is changing as Piastri's trying to catch up to Esteban Ocon. Let's see, Stroll has DRS. He makes a pass on us again, coming into the chicane. As we're coming up to the chicane, you can see a yellow marker there. We have a yellow flag up ahead. We're trying to figure out who it is. Piastri, 2 seconds back behind Ocon. As we're trying to pass Stroll, you can see up ahead, that is Oscar Piastri having to retire the car. So we're going to be bumped up to P12 against Stroll as we're fighting for position. So Piastri is out of the race in the finale of the season. For McLaren, Russell, Hamilton, Alonso, the top three. Perez, Leclerc, Verstappen. 3 laps to go to try to fight Russell for the championship win. Doesn't look like he's going to get it. Lap 20, the final lap. Lance Stroll has DRS, moving on the inside. He gets that pace. We pull behind him for the tow to try to stay with him. We brake late into the chicane. We're side by side. We end up losing our momentum, missing our braking point, as though we push him off the curb. And he's probably not happy about that, especially with how this is the end of the season. We've been basically fighting him the whole time. He moves on the outside. He has the better line. He has a better pace this time, but with the speed coming on from the outside. But we have the inside, a little bit of wheel spin there from those mediums, running these mediums hard and fighting for position as we make a late lunge on the inside, pushing him out, giving him his last and final track limit warning. It's a fight for P12, even though it's out of the points. He managed to stay ahead of Lance Stroll at the end of the race to finish the season in P12.
And that's the end of the race. We'll see you in Parc Fermé.
And with that, another year of Formula One draws to a close and a new World Drivers' Champion is declared. Another entry added to that prestigious list of the sport's most incredible drivers. Victory today then, but bittersweet emotions, I'm sure, as the championship slips through their fingers. Even so, what a fantastic final race of the season this was. Tell me, Ant, how do they manage to achieve this win?
I think a large part of the result comes down to temperament. they were able to keep their heads when everyone around them was losing theirs. And that's allowed them to get the best out of the car, to maximise the strategy, and to stay out of trouble.
And I can see the drivers starting to approach the podium for the victory celebrations. A real team victory today. Everybody played their part. Congratulations then to Mercedes, your race winners. Let's have a quick look at how the driver standings have changed. And this also means there's no catching our leader anymore. And we crown a new World Drivers' Champion. Now, let's discuss, Ant. Who would you say is a contender for Driver of the Day?
There's a few contenders, but George Russell definitely stood out, I think. A really solid drive from him today, and one I'm sure the fans enjoyed.
It's another clear win for Mercedes as they managed to secure the Constructors' title. An incredible performance for the whole team. Well, what an end to another fantastic weekend of racing. Thanks to everyone who joined us, and we'll see you for the next one.
All right, so there you have it. George Russell is the world champion for this season. Max Verstappen ending up in P5, not having a good race. We had our own fight from the back of the pack. We managed to get up to pace with our teammate Logan Sargent. He dropped back down to P14 after a long fight with Lance Stroll. We were fighting with Lance Stroll, Nico Hülkenberg, and Ken Magnussen, as Logan Sargent was at pace with Joe Granu. So we saw him fighting ahead of us as we were trying to catch up to him. We just couldn't catch up to Esteban Ocon and Venturi Paddock. And I honestly feel like we should split down the middle 10-10, as Oscar Piastri DNF'd with an engine failure, I believe, and we had a lot of track limits we were hitting, and yeah, mechanical failure for Oscar Piastri, and a little bit of contact between myself, Hülkenberg, and Stroll with Hülkenberg as well. But yeah, so that's going to round out the end of our season as we finish the driver standings in P9 ahead of Pierre Gasly. He wasn't able to score enough points, so we barely beat him out there for P9 in the driver standings, as he finishes in the top 10 in P9, dropping from P4. So, without further ado, we will see you guys later in the episode for our it's basically going to be a post-race a post-season / pre-season episode, as we recap over the season, as well as go over driver changes and livery updates and stuff like that. So we will see you guys in the next episode, and I thank you guys for watching the season so far, and I hope you guys stick around for season 2, as we have a lot of stuff coming for us, because I'm getting pretty excited for it. I have a lot of stuff planned, and hopefully it's going to be a lot better fighting on the track than it was this season, because we were basically trying to figure out our setups throughout the season. So yeah, P12 finish from P20 with those track penalties for the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix and Grand Finale race. So we'll see you guys in the next episode.